All right. Good morning, everybody. We'll officially get started here, and I'd remind everybody that we are recording the meeting, and it will be posted to the district's Office of Open Government website after the meeting is done. I'd ask all advisory group members to mute themselves throughout the meeting unless you wish to speak. Members of the public on the line may listen today, but there's no scheduled time for public comment at this meeting. If for some reason we have technical difficulties, unfortunately, I'll just have to close the meeting. We will then reschedule another one. And I guess with that, I'll move on to a roll call of folks. Just to check, Don Brayman, are you here? All right, I think Don is not on the call. Paul Butler.
Yes, I'm here.
Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
Helga Gill. All right, I think Helder's now on. Laura Hankins.
I'm here.
Great, good morning. Dave Rosenthal.
I'm here as well. Good morning, everyone.
Hello. Ilana Suttenberg.
I'm here, good morning.
Hello. Kevin Whitfield.
Here.
Good morning, Kevin. And let's see, for other visiting advisory group members, we have, I guess Nishant would be the next. Nishant Kirkat. Nishant, are you on the line? I think I see you in our queue here, but perhaps that's wrong. All right, well, I'll step back. He may have stepped away from the line. Katya Seminova.
Hello.
Oh, I heard Katya briefly there. Excellent.
Here, I'm here.
Great. Good. And we have CCRC staff on, myself, Richard Schmeckel, Margarita Bronstein, Janu Park, and Rachel Redfern.
Rich, I also see Seema.
Hi, Richard, I'm on too.
Great. Good, there you are. Yep, sorry, I saw, yep. Welcome. Thanks for joining us, Seema Gebjwani. All right, then I think we have everybody. Let me just double check. Dawn didn't slip in here neither. No. Okay. Good. Well, before we get going, a few announcements as usual. First, Patrice, as many of you may be aware, as of the new year, our friend and colleague, Patrice Sultan, is no longer on staff at the CCRC. She's left to dedicate herself to a nonprofit organization that she started. And I just want to thank Patrice on the record for the tremendous intelligence and experience and passion that she brought to us on staff. We could not have gotten this far without her. So, you know, Patrice is simply irreplaceable. We will do our best to address topics that she was our kind of lead expert on. But for those matters in particular, it may take us longer to research responses and dig a bit to get back to any questions or comments you have on matters that she was covering for us. So I appreciate your patience as we transition kind of our staff assignments. And again, we're sad and definitely miss Patrice on staff, but I expect we'll continue to hear from her. Second, court data. Just last week, I sent out Memo 40 with some updated court statistics. I wasn't sure exactly when we'd be able to get that out, so it wasn't added to the agenda for today's meeting. I will put it on the February meeting agenda. But there are kind of 3 points I wanted to highlight. I know you all are tremendously busy, so let me just say a few things. You know, one, the years covered by this new memo, the analysis in Memo 40, the years covered are the same as in the prior Memo 38. Okay, so it's covering basically 2010 to 2019, that 10-year span, with an additional sheet in there for some 2009 data. If you're interested in that, we can fold that in order to kind of keep a clear 10-year window. It's the oldest. It's also a few more problems with the data there, just in terms of cleaning it. And the organization of the data analysis, the fields in this analysis, everything's the same here again in this latest memo number 40 as it was in memo 38. What's different is that memo 38 presented the first in time sentence in the court records and analyzed that. Whereas in memo 40, what we did was we looked at sentences that were at two later times, kind of two later snapshots from the sentencing records. First, a 72-hour after the initial sentence. That point in time, we chose that because that's, from our conversations with the court, what we understand to be kind of the end of the period for the court's kind of quality assurance process to kind of try to catch typos, whatnot. So we took that point in time, and then we also looked at a snapshot for whatever the last recorded entry was, for a particular sentence. So this might, have changed over time since the original sentence to reflect, adjustments based on, for example, an appellate ruling, any subsequent change. So we have these two different later points in time after the initial sentence, which is what we're focused on in this latest memo 40. And the long and short of it is, we did find some minor differences in the analyses of these different points, but they're negligible in the overall picture, right? So, if we're looking, at the whole span and where sentencing is ending up over, multiple years for these offenses and looking at them in the aggregate, it makes virtually no difference. We are continuing to look at that, but yeah. So that's from our perspective a good thing that analysis didn't kind of pick up any problems or flaws in the early analysis, and in fact is to the extent we've been looking at that, relying on that for kind of our thinking previously. Well, this doesn't shift it much, if at all, really. But we're still looking at it. So do let us know if you find any errors in it, if you look at it. But I would encourage you, treat this latest memo 40 just as you did, hopefully, memo 38, which is more as a reference document. It's lengthy. The spreadsheet has far more information and some hidden columns. You can unhide them as you will. We try to limit it, just kind of what initially shows, in order to make it at least printable, somewhat printable, and that's what we're in the PDFs attached to the memo are from, again, that longer sheet that I sent you. So those are essentially excerpts, even though they're already lengthy. So again, I suggest you treat it as a reference document. Use the spreadsheet for looking around things. There's a wealth of information there. When it comes down to looking at penalties and charging for particular offenses. It's a great place to go. I don't think it otherwise makes sense. You aren't certainly being asked to kind of review the all in its totality, all of these statistics and analysis. And I guess this leads to kind of the next thing I wanted to raise in the announcements, which is we did not include penalty recommendations in the giant report 66 that you received in December. So, I'm sorry, 67. So what we sent, what it's missing is really just RCC 603, which is the section dealing with the authorized terms of imprisonment. And then the update to the ordinal ranking sheet, right? That spreadsheet that kind of shows, okay, here are the classes, and here are where each offense would plug into that. And we will be updating both of those shortly. We expect to get that out to you by the end of next week, on or by Friday. So that will come out and be kind of staggered with the other recommendations already before you. So you'll have a month to get back any comments on that penalty recommendations. And again, you'll have a chance to look at it at the same time as you're looking at the rest of the work, really dealing with offense elements and scope of liability. So you'll be able to see those two together, have a little bit of extra time into first part of February to get back any additional recommendations on penalties. I'm also optimistic that with that penalty update next week, we'll be able to provide some additional documents that helps show how the RCC penalty recommendations look compared to current DC code penalties and court data, reflecting actual sentencing practice. Those data points, I think, are all incredibly relevant to penalty recommendations and kind of assessing what the impact will be of the RCC changes. And it's obviously, it's not obviously, but it is a work of art, not science, to do this. It requires lining up kind of apples and oranges in terms of different elements for different offenses in the current code versus the RCC, and saying, okay, this is comparable to this, and here are then the penalties that correspond. There are also a lot of court codes, which I've talked about before, which are inscrutable as to kind of which particular subsection they're addressing. So it's a tricky thing, but we're trying to line this up in a more easily accessible way for you all. And we hope to have that out the end of next week, along with the update to 603, the authorized terms of imprisonment, and the sheet showing what are then the classes, the classification for each particular RCC offense. So that's all coming. Sorry we couldn't get it before, but we wanted to see this new data and look at it and make sure that there weren't any surprises there, and really try to, again, kind of meld some of these data points, put them together in order to issue these penultimate recommendations here on penalties. Okay. Last thing I want to just paint out a bit. I will follow this up in an email as well, but just the schedule here for these next few months, right? Our statute distinguishes between drafts of recommendations, which the advisory group has a minimum of a month to provide feedback on, and final recommendations. We're required to, the final recommendations must be based on the comments received, and then it goes to a vote by a majority of the voting members. I'll send out, just a copy of this, statutory language too, as we get to the end here. Some of those details matter. Our statutory deadline to deliver the final recommendations to the council and the mayor is this March 31st. And per our prior discussion, our plan is to have an advisory group special meeting on March 24th for a vote on the final recommendations. And between now and March 24th, here's how I see the milestones here. And again, I'll email this out as well. But so first, by the end of next week, on or by Friday, January 15th, we'll issue an updated report with for imprisonment terms, again, RCC 603, and the classification of RCC offenses. You'll receive that. Next, kind kind of deadline or marker there is the end of this month, Friday, January 29th, when comments are due on the cumulative update you received in December, report 67. After that, a little bit after that, the following week, Wednesday, February 3rd, we have our next advisory group meeting. So that we have a chance to address any questions about the penalty recommendations, but which will be, on the table then, as well as the comments received back on the cumulative update report 67. So those will be on the agenda, as well as, again, I mentioned I'll add to the agenda the court statistic that at the February meeting. Mid-February, so February 15th will be, or on or around there, depending on when we get out the update on penalties. A month later, around February 15th, will be the due date for any comments on those updated penalty recommendations. And from that point, we're at the staff level just in finalizing things and putting together the final recommendations. And we'll expect to issue those on or by March 10th. So Wednesday, March 10th, that's 9 weeks from today, and 2 weeks before the scheduled vote, March 24th, we'll be getting you our final recommendations to look over before the final vote. And yeah, I know this is an intense schedule for everybody in winter. That is particularly hard for many people for many reasons. And so I very much appreciate your time and efforts as everybody's, doing the best they can. And I guess, yeah, so before we move on to the, the report 67, any questions about particularly this timeline or any of the other announcements before we kind of move into the report?
Rich, this is Dave. Not really a question, but I would say that the time crunch is actually worse for some of us than it even appears, because with all that's going on and has been going on because of national elections and the impact of what's been happening in DC this week and leading up to this week, as well as the inauguration on the 20th. OAG will meet the deadline that you guys required, but I have to tell you that this is particularly a bad month to have to complete the full review of the draft report. I just felt the need to put that out there.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you. I wish we are, crunched, obviously. This is an enormous undertaking. Kevin's on the phone. I think the council appreciates, or I hope they appreciate again, the scope of this work in its breadth and complexity, and that, yeah, it's just an enormous undertaking. So I know we've been working on this for years. There's a real sense of urgency, which I think is also, very well-founded to get out what we have, even if we, keep working on filling out additional recommendations on matters that we hadn't gotten to, and even if the council, as it proceeds on the legislative track, begins to open up conversations about the recommendations and, invite further feedback. So, this, yeah, I get it. And I think, several of you are again, struggling this month. And I, unfortunately, we have to meet the statutory deadline, and I appreciate you all, doing your best to prioritize what are the most important issues at this point. And the only thing I would kind of counsel is, again, not to worry about re-raising concerns that were previously addressed in an earlier drafts, right? I know there are many. There are many, and some of them are particularly urgent for you or for your organization. So, but at this point, I think we really need to focus in on the last changes. They should be painted out in the D2, Appendix D2, which again kind of responds to prior comments that hadn't been previously addressed, flags other changes that the CCRC has come up with on its own based on everything, being reviewed and coming together further. So that document is hopefully going to be a way to march through things. Many of the entries are, not going to be of interest to y'all. They're, some of them are extremely minor. Some of them are more important. So I think scanning through that, you also have the red ink version of the statutes themselves, which is another kind of quick way to see what's been changed. So in terms of, making best use of the time that is available, that's what I would have to offer. I and staff are available to set up, calls to discuss questions. Please email me. We're, scheduling as well. So we'll have to try to pull staff and get it together. So give us a couple days lead time if you can, please. As we come out of the holidays, hopefully we'll be able to be a bit more responsive. But yeah, that's the best we can do. And again, I really do appreciate, I know everybody's, this is a busy time for some of you in particular, being crushed on other work fronts. So, yeah. Any other?
Yeah, this is Ilana. I just have a question. I might have missed you saying this. Are there going to be any new substantive recommendations following this one, or is this kind of the last? I mean, I know that you'll obviously respond to any comments that are received, but are there going to be kind of any new provisions drafted in whatever's the next substantive update?
Yeah, so right, and just to be clear, so the update you'll get the end of next week on penalties, and then I expect that's it for anything kind of newer updates before the final set issued in early March. Between now or, we'll respond to the comments we have, in this set and on the penalties, but I don't anticipate taking on any new material for the coming months, through March until we get this out. So, there are some things which I really wish we had been able to get to, some offenses, and we just won't. We just don't have the bandwidth, and I think you all don't have the bandwidth either. So yeah, we'll be responding there. So I guess I'd say, there will be substantive changes, right? But within the scope of what's already out there. I don't anticipate additional things coming up. If we do, again, this whole kind of process is set up so that there's a first draft that you can kind of see. So I don't think we may go up to the very end here with the final set of recommendations to resolve some issues that are hot items. We keep getting comments on and going back and forth and looking at, and but I don't foresee other anything else new. Does that kind of get at your question or concern?
That does. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Other questions or concerns at this point? Again, either on any of these things I kind of mentioned in the announcement. So, the court statistics that you received, the penalty recommendations, which are coming out next week. It'll look the same too, basically. So, right, it'll have the 603 to plug in to the rest of the RCC. It'll have the same kind of sheets that you saw before with. For each, here are the classes, and then here are each of the RCC offenses, and then marking for each one. And I'm actually, again, we're going to have some supporting materials there too, go a little bit further. And there were a few, I should say, some of the comments that you all gave regarding penalties, in the last basically 6 months, some of those we were able to address in the December materials, the December report, report 67, but some, not all. And so there are some that still linger out there. And so I'll be putting together, I guess it's going to be a Appendix D3 as we kind of go through these iterations to, again, flag comments that we previously received from you that were about penalties that we haven't yet addressed. So that'll be part of what you receive next week too. Again, we're really trying to make an effort that every kind of comment that's been raised by the advisory group, we've, in writing, done something to address it. Helps us to keep track of things, hopefully helps you too, and creates a record, for down the road. Okay, again, any other questions before we move on to Report 67? Okay. Hearing nothing. And yes, staff is just let me just check my email here. Let's, I guess on the report itself, I want to mainly open this up for discussion, but I did want to first kind of say, just flag one thing that was in the memo that I sent. So this is, memo 39. And again, I apologize if I've been saying 67. I think I meant to be saying 68 for the materials that went out last month. The memo flags 2 DCCA cases that we're still examining and we're aware may require further changes. And, this is Fleming, the en banc decision, regarding causation in certain circumstances, and, how best to address that. I know it's in, obviously causation has been an issue of, kind of strong disagreement among some of the members, and that decision, which, is, an en banc ruling that certainly addresses things in part, but leaves a lot of open questions as well, and particularly, doesn't even, kind of apply to causation generally outside of particular murder context. We're still mulling that, and any further comments I want to flag on that, we would appreciate. I don't know, again, kind of we'll see what we get, whether we'll be making kind of any more substantive change there, but I want to particularly flag that for any further comments. Now you've also seen each other's comments on that. The other case actually is Lucas, which came out in 2020 as well, which has to deal with the bias enhancement. And you may recall, anyway, this case basically kind of dealt with, again, what is causation in that context, and some of the language, how to interpret the current statute. The court came out, again, with a very strong, to my mind, position that because of, or, but for causation was required under the current statute in their interpretation, although that was very clearly their way of salvaging the constitutionality of the statute. So, we've looked at that. We've looked at that hard, and we'll continue to look at that with respect to our hate crime penalty enhancement. And I just want to, again, kind of flag that as something that if is of particular interest to us, if you all had further comments as to, in light of that case, what our recommendation should be to the council and the mayor. So those are the two things I really wanted to flag in particular. As the memo also mentions, we have eliminated the effective consent defense and have received there's one or two questions about that via email. And so that offense was before included in the general part, even though it applied only to certain kind of subtitle 2 offenses against persons. And what we decided was that it really wasn't clear when you try to apply that defense to the range of offenses against persons, how it exactly worked, how things would particularly work for minors and their ability to give consent. So we took a different approach with the December report and have taken and basically put into specific offenses against persons an effective consent defense that is more tailored to that particular offense. And that's a different approach. It has different language as well in those different offenses. So you may want to take a particular look at that. Assault, the effective consent defense is lengthy. It really tries to deal with some thorny issues that about, again, how age might work in terms of giving consent to certain things in certain circumstances. And it's tricky. So would certainly welcome comments on that. But I just, again, want to flag it didn't just disappear. It got broken up, essentially, out of the general part and placed into particular as a defense specific to particular offenses in subtitle 2. Okay, I'm going to take more time with kind of overview of this, but were there, maybe before we even kind of get into things, again, there's so many materials here. Did anybody have questions kind of about kind of organization of materials, being able to find everything, problems in, again, just kind of navigating what was presented?
Richard, I just had a substantive question, if now's a good time for that.
Sure.
I noticed that menacing went away, and I will be honest, I have not dived deep into the commentary yet, or the explanations for the changes. So this might all be somewhere. But I saw that menacing went away, but that was still reserved. And so I was just wondering, or there was a subsection in 22E1203 that was still reserved. So I was wondering if menacing was just kind of subsumed elsewhere, or what, where it was.
Great question. Yes, and so what we did, and well, first let me say, like, there are some places where, again, the table of contents will show that something, like, there's just like reserved a block where, again, something got moved or, again, kind of broken up and moved into something else. And we, partly because we didn't want to be too confusing, partly because we were scrambling to get it out the door, we did not kind of renumber everything at this point. So what happened with menacing is, yes, substantively, that is now kind of racked into criminal threats. You'll see there's an additional gradation there that deals with threats in immediate presence of somebody else. So you'll see that there's some description of that again in the App D2 changes. We talk about it. The commentary has been updated. So, but that's going to be the place to look for that. Okay. But as a more general point, I would flag that. Yeah. So where something like that or effective consent defense was moved or again broken up and subsumed in other statutory sections, we didn't go through and so you'll see some kind of reserved places. That doesn't necessarily mean that we think anything's going to go there. We may shift, kind of our numbering system, right, for the final recommendations to kind of close those gaps up. Yeah, other places, again, we put reserved in just to mark where again, hopefully, some additional work will be able to be done on additional offenses that is expected, down the road. And so in defenses, right now I'm looking at the table of contents, 405, 406, 407. I think at this point we are not expecting to fill those. So those will be deleted and we will be renumbering what's current 408. And again, as you mentioned, for 1203, which was previously menacing, we'll be renumbering, assuming we proceed with the way we kind of reorganized and folded into criminal threats the menacing type conduct, liability for menacing type conduct. So, and again, with that may also be reversed, like see where the comments are and what folks have to say. So, so does that address that particular issue for you, Alana?
Yes.
Great. Good. Yeah. Other questions, substantive or procedural, or just again like organizational in terms of being able to find something?
I have a substantive question. It's about the definition of dwelling.
Okay.
Which in Appendix D2 says it was rewritten to make it easier to read. My question is, remind me again why, what it's supposed to mean that a dwelling is, that a structure is designed for lodging or residing overnight, why that's important versus actually used for lodging?
I believe, partly this is, coming from the history, and I will say I'll have to follow up on this as thing. My ability to recall particular details on some of this, I'll have to do some checking. So first, with the caveat, I'll follow up, look at this.
Sorry, I don't mean to make this a pop quiz. I'll just say what I'm thinking. So yeah. I'm guessing, although what's left in the commentary doesn't explain this at all. I'm guessing that it's for a home or something that at the time of the offense isn't used for lodging. It's an abandoned apartment. It's an abandoned house, but somehow it's still a dwelling because it at that time really anyone could move in at any moment. So it's still a dwelling. Someone actually could be inside. What it previously said, before it was changed to make it easier to read, was that it was a structure that was either designed or actually used, either designed for lodging or residing overnight at the time of the offense, or that's actually used for lodging or residing overnight. And what you took out was at the time of the offense. So I think at the time of the offense got added because of a comment that PDS made previously in writing, and I actually think we maybe even discussed at a meeting, that structures can be originally designed to be lodging, but haven't been used for lodging for a number of years and are now sort of an office. It may still look like it's designed for lodging, right? I'm sure we've all been in buildings like that where you go in the bathroom and there's a bathtub, but really it's now an office. So this easier to read actually, I think, substantively changed a change you all made and accepted for very good reason. So if design is supposed to mean something, it really is there as opposed to now actual use. I do think design at the time of the offense. I'll make the comment in writing, but or you disagree with how I understood what you previously did and now just undid.
Great. Like I said, I will look into this a bit more. And I think, I do remember we've had conversations, some of these go back years on that point. We have used that term now in, multiple places. I'm seeing, arson, trespass, burglary. And I know PDS has been particularly, cognizant of how, right, occupancy at the time, is it abandoned, is it not? What does, and I think we, had conversations, what does used mean in these circumstances too? Because there's ambiguity about what actually used, at some point in the past, when in the past, currently, 3 days ago, 5 weeks, what point something becomes abandoned. So I don't think, I guess I would say this, we'll look at it again, and definitely possible that we inadvertently made a language change now that we didn't kind of grasp the import of because it was based on language far back. So we'll check it out. I will say, again, for several definitions, also as we were looking at them again, we have tried to keep definitions often broad, but so that they will work for multiple offenses, but in each offense, trying to be very careful as to, again, whether that term is doing the appropriate work. So, part of the issue, I think, again, goes to what, in burglary, in arson, where the distinction between a dwelling and another building is at stake. How is this playing out there? It doesn't, I don't mean to say that pulls the ground out from your question. Your question is still totally valid. And I think, nobody intends, we did not intend for this to cover the, an office building that was, 100 years ago built as a residential building, right? And so it's a drafting issue that we may or may not be able to do in drafting to be as clear as possible that we want to eliminate that. But where in the line then of more recent use, things come into play, I guess that's the issue. So point noted, we'll check it out and get back to you. But also your written comments are totally in order if you think that's substantive.
Thank you.
Hey, other questions or comments?
This is Ilana again. I noticed that cosmetic procedures were now included in a lot, and I think in the commentary there was kind of a CEG of a portion of the DC code that refers to kind of certain cosmetic licensing. And I was wondering if there was more of a, there might be somewhere in the commentary also, but I was wondering if it's kind of more expansive list of what would constitute a cosmetic procedure that would not necessarily constitute a medical procedure. And I get that it might be waxes or something like that, where, there could be termed a bodily injury, but I was just kind of wondering about that definition generally.
Right. So again, I have to follow up, kind of looking to get more specifics, but generally here's what's going on. The DC code definition and, to a large extent, our serious bodily injury definition, both, refer to disfigurement, okay? And there's not a lot of there's virtually no case law in the district and even little kind of nationally as to kind of what falls in that category, right? What does it mean to be obvious disfigurement? So the worry here is that, are you bringing into play procedures that are quite commonplace, from chemical treatments and that could be administered, or available over the counter, or may require a professional under a cosmetology license in the district. Kind of different degrees of this, but all of which are medical procedures. And, that obviously Whereas the traditional line and kind of respected in the RCC is the inability to give consent to serious bodily injury where that is kind of adverse to the health of one. We don't mean to exclude kind of non-health related cosmetic injuries. So there's the concern we're trying to work with is to make sure that, again, consent to, cosmetic changes doesn't trigger serious bodily injury and bar consent defense. We think those are, again, kind of very commonplace. So that's the general framework for why that's introduced, that terminology. Specifically kind of how that works out again in the DC code does have a surprising number of regulations in this area around tattooing, right? And similar types of practices. And so we're trying to, I think, draw upon some of those sources where work has been done thinking through, again, some of the distinctions. Quickly can't put my fingers on much more. This is actually something Patrice also helped with. So we can research that and get back to you if you want to ping me with an email, or if it's not a big issue, your call. But that's the general reason for why that terminology is introduced.
It was a pretty minor issue, but just one that I noticed as I was looking through it. But it appears that it would just really be in, like at least in the assault context. I don't need to focus too much on this fairly small language. I'm sorry if you hear my 2-year-old in the background. But it looks like it would just be a defense basically to like the serious bodily injury, but not to like the significant bodily injury or just bodily injury.
Right. Those are just broader, like to the extent those are broad. The defenses are much broader, right? For lower levels of injuries, you can basically consent, and an adult, right, can consent to basically, lower bodily injury or significant bodily injury, but not serious bodily injury, right? This is the kind of traditional common law line. And so, right, the concern was that with respect to liability for serious bodily injury, that's where we needed to kind of make an additional distinction about cosmetic injuries. So that's why it only appears there and not for the lower level, because it's actually even broader for the consent defense is even broader for a cosmetic injury that results in only a bodily injury or only in significant bodily injury. Does that make sense?
That does. Yeah,
okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Other issues or questions? Again, my guess is you all have started cracking these documents open and looking at particular parts of them, and different things may have come up. Oh, I should also mention that Don Brayman joined us on the call. I see. That's great. And yeah. Any other questions or concerns at this point? All right. Well, I won't try to fill it up. Everybody's busy, so do please reach out if there are particular issues we can address. If it's something I would say too, look, if something's a complete utter disaster and it's not just a policy difference, but we've just muddled something, there's text missing, any kind of substantive problems, do please, shoot me an email. And I don't want to kind of give a constant dripping of small corrections. But, you know, if I learn or hear of, you know, kind of typos or, you know, kind of missing text, something that's, you know, kind of substantively wrong and unclear, I will send out an update to everybody. Again, let me know if you'd like to meet to kind of resolve any issues, maybe towards the end of the month as it's, your comments are being finalized. I will follow up with an email with the dates that I mentioned at the beginning. And if anybody has problems or concerns with that, understanding that we just kind of don't have room on the, you know, our overall deadline. But, you know, feel free to reach out to me on that too. And so, yeah, unless there's any last comments, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to a close.
I want to make one final comment, and that is sort of looking at all of this, and I have been sort of reviewing it. It's a tremendous piece of work. I still have issues with things. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for PDS. But I do want to thank the commission, the staff for all of your hard work. As I said, I don't agree with everything, but it's truly amazing, and it does reflect just so much thought and hard work. And I want to thank you all for all the time, the years now that you've put into all of this.
Well, thank you, Laura. And again, yes, you all have made this possible, and you know, where the council has given us this opportunity. And I think, you know, we're in 2021. This is going to have some legs. You know, how it gets taken up by the council and the mayor is, you know, beyond my place. But I'm very encouraged that, you know, look, through this process, we've all found a lot of room for improvement. And what we put together is by no means, I think, perfect, but it is solving some issues that have been long-standing in the district and nationally. I mean, you know, we're going to continue to have disagreements in the group, I'm sure, around causation, around all sorts of issues. And you know what? These are problems that nobody nationally in the last couple centuries has been able to do better by. So if we can do better than a lot of other jurisdictions, or in all jurisdictions, we're happy. And so this is a great starting place for I think the council to take it up this coming year, and I'm hopeful that they will, and take a serious effort to, in this council period, move it into law. So yes, on that note, 2021 ahead, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to a close. And again, thank you all for your time, and don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and call the meeting to a close. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Bye.